On the 2nd of December 2022, Brian Johnson, aka The Liver King, uploaded a video to his channel confessing to his use of steroids.
And I misled a lot of people.
After emails were leaked between him and multiple steroid use experts. Prior to his confession video, the Liver King vehemently opposed any and all accusations against him, both on podcasts.
There's a lot of subprimals that are convinced that Liver King is taking steroids.
And in the comment section of his socials. Instead, he claimed that his abnormally large muscles were because of his diet, which, as his name suggests, consists of copious amounts of organ meat, including heart, bone marrow, testicles, and of course, liver, all of which he eats raw. Now, this debacle seems to have raised two questions. Why did anyone believe him in the first place? And why should I care? Well, let's start by answering what I think is the simpler question. Why should we care? The Liver King claims,
The Liver King brand has had nothing, or at least very little, to do with my business success. My companies were already kicking ass, already successful before the Liver King public figure.
this is most likely technically the truth, but that doesn't take away from the fact that his goal was almost certainly to use the success of the Liver King brand to gain more influence and earn more money in the future. His goal was to convince people that the way to get as buff as him was to eat liver and other organ meats. He also just so happens to own, as far as I can tell, 4 supplement companies that focus on natural supplements. In particular, they sell some of the most popular liver and bone marrow tablets on the market. And I wouldn't have a problem with any of this if he was telling the truth. There is no denying that eating liver and other organ meats is good for you. But to claim that eating liver led to you looking like this, and then to directly sell liver tablets on the back of that lie, is pretty disgusting, honestly. And then to go even further and claim that the whole social media thing isn't earning you any money, well, that's just the rotten cherry on top. I also have a much more personal reason for caring about the Liver King's lies. You see, me and the Liver King are technically working towards the same goal, trying to teach the same thing: ancestral health, natural living, whatever you want to call it. And when people like the Liver King are found out to be big old liars, it sucks. Because I made this YouTube channel to talk about and explore evidence-based and logically sound principles centered around natural movement and ancestral health. And people like the Liver King make people like me look like we're living in f***ing clown world. Like we're all fringe lunatics, running around bare-chested, shouting primal, and taking bites out of raw liver whenever we get the chance. I admit that I live a fairly unusual lifestyle, but I challenge anyone to watch my videos and not at least understand the logic behind what I'm doing. But for a lot of people, the Liver King is their first time hearing about a lot of these concepts. And with reputation being so important, when one of the largest names in ancestral health is proven to be a liar, it has implications for everyone else working in this space. Okay, so it's time for the slightly more complicated question. Why did anyone believe he was natural in the first place? I mean, seriously, look at him. But that's not a very good answer, is it? Because for someone that doesn't know much about steroid use or health in general, how would they be able to tell that this isn't a natural body? Maybe this really is the result of eating a buttload of organ meat. And for that matter, until he was exposed, how did we know for sure that he was taking steroids? Maybe he was just a genetic freak, for lack of a better phrase. Someone with just the right physiological makeup and the perfect hormonal profile to look like this without the need for steroids. But even still, while we may not have been able to prove that the Liver King was lying about his steroid use, we can prove that he was lying, or at least being hypocritical, about other aspects of his lifestyle. And here's how. Let's try to look at the Liver King in the most favourable light we can, the way he wants to be perceived. And then, let's compare that to all of the crazy shit he posts on social media, to see if he really is living the ancestral life he claims to be living. And then we can wrap it all up by comparing him to an actual tribe of hunter-gatherers. And hopefully, after all of that, it will be clear that it wasn't just the big muscles that gave away that the Liver King was lying. So, How does the Liver King want to be perceived? Well, I think it's quite clear that he wants to be seen as a leader and an expert in the world of ancestral health and living. And to that end, he advocates for making life decisions based on what our ancestors did. For instance, he is an advocate for eating unprocessed natural food, especially grass-fed and organic. He has a particular focus on eating nose to tail, which means eating the whole of the animal, including the meat, skin, organs, and bone marrow. And not only that, he's a big proponent of fasting, which would have been a normal part of a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. He also talks a lot about movement, getting outside every day for a walk, and getting some time in the sun while you're out there for that all-important vitamin D. And as you can probably guess, he's also a big proponent of hard workouts. They are on the extreme end, but you can't really deny the results. And just a side note here, even though we now know about his steroid use, that doesn't really take away from the amount of hard work required to get a body like that. Steroids don't just give you muscles, they increase their growth rate and they increase their maximum size. So the amount of muscle that this man has built is an impressive feat, with or without steroids. Another thing that I have yet to mention are his 9 ancestral tenets, which are essentially his 9 rules on how to live a healthy ancestral life. We've covered food, movement, and sun already, but they also include getting a good night's sleep, being part of a community, and doing cold exposure regularly. Overall, a fairly solid set of tenets to live by, and I'm sure if you followed them, you would be a very healthy person. Okay, that's enough brown nosing for one lifetime. Let's start tearing down that facade and talk about the man that the Liver King really is, or at least his social media persona. One of the most hilarious things about the Liver King is his just absurd level of post hoc rationalization. Post hoc rationalization is when you first take an action and then afterwards come up with the reason why you took that action. In the case of the Liver King, that usually comes down to doing whatever he wants, or doing something flashy for the camera, and then making up some bullshit about why it's a really primal thing to do.
Godzilla, you get some liver.
Primal! 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 Primal!
Like here, where he carries out the absolutely incredible feat of carrying all of his luggage in one trip, because our ancestors in the primal world only got one shot, one opportunity, and therefore so should you. Or these two, where he does things underwater, because our ancestors dominated the land, the air, and the sea. And then there's just this utter nonsense where he claims that, well, he smoked cigars, but so did our ancestors. He wears cool hats, but so did our ancestors. And he uses the best weaponry available to him, because you know what? So did his ancestors. And therefore, because he does all of these things, he is in fact extremely primal. He uses this gun argument quite a lot, claiming that our ancestors always used the best weapons available to them, and so they would also choose to use guns if they had the option. And you know, I agree. A lot of them probably would have, but he completely ignores the fact that this line of thinking is exactly what led to us living in this modern sedentary world in the first place. Let me show you just how easy it is to post hoc rationalize basically anything into seeming primal. I drive a car because my ancestors were always looking for the quickest and most efficient way to get from one place to another. I spend 6 hours a day on Facebook because real primals stay connected to their tribe all day long. I buy all my food from the supermarket because our ancestors prioritized gathering food efficiently over everything else. This is pretty much the Liver King's tactic for everything he posts. In fact, he sometimes post hoc rationalizes so hard that he'll make 2 very similar posts with 2 completely opposing messages. One says, "You should have fun. Be excited, because that's what real primals do." And the other says that you should stay calm and keep your shit together, because that's what real primals do. I've spent way too long watching Liver King videos over the last few weeks, but I can't help but think that one of the biggest aspects of the Lizard King, one of the biggest aspects of the Liver King's success, and possibly one of the main reasons that so many people believed that he wasn't on steroids, is that he literally looks like the stereotypical cartoon drawing of a caveman. The bulging muscles, the bare chest, the big unkempt beard. You just have to add a leopard print loincloth and an oversized wooden club, and he is perfect. But while he matches the stereotype perfectly, he couldn't be any further from what a real hunter-gatherer actually looks like. And we know this for sure because the Liver King gave us the best comparison we could possibly ask for when he visited and hunted with the Hadza tribe. As I'm sure you can see, there are some differences in the shape of their bodies. Pretty much all of the Hadza men in this video have a similar body type. They are generally on the skinnier side, but they are toned with wide, strong shoulders. The Liver King, on the other hand, doesn't look like that. I'll leave it to you to play spot the difference. But this difference in body shape is indicative of the hugely different lifestyles between someone that claims to live ancestrally and somebody that actually lives that way. The Liver King has access to functionally infinite food, as in he can afford to buy more food than he could ever possibly eat. And he shows it off regularly with his huge platters of burgers and organ meats. The Hadza, on the other hand, only have as much food as they can hunt and gather, and that naturally limits how much muscle they can build and maintain. They also have to be able to efficiently run for long distances as part of their hunts, and their lightweight is a huge factor in that. Lightweight is not something you could call the Liver King, and while I'm sure he does some running, it's not a necessity for him to be able to do it efficiently. And that brings us nicely onto the topic of movement. The Hadza move brilliantly. They are fast and agile and very capable at climbing, scrambling and sprinting. And they are not only fit and strong, but they are also extremely skilled in bow and spear use. The Liver King lifts heavy stuff and shoots guns. And while he is far from the worst mover I've ever seen, there's just something off about the way he moves. For a start, he has that muscly person walk. I used to know a guy who called it carrying rugs because they always looked like they had a rolled up rug under each arm. And they haven't quite worked out how to make walking look easy. And it's not only his walking that's off. He never really looks comfortable doing any exercise that isn't heavy lifting. Like I said, he is far from the worst mover I've ever seen, but he isn't really on the same level as his truly primal acquaintances. Okay, so I'm pretty done with listening to the Liver King at this point, and I still need to edit this video. But if you aren't bored of listening to me yet, then maybe you'll be interested in hearing about how I live my life a little more on the primal side.